Welcome back. We take you back to the story. The UN Human Rights Council meeting to consider an EU draft resolution on Ethiopia calling for an investigation into abuses committed by all parties since the late 2020s. Now, the late 2020 year, the special session on Friday was held at the request of the European Union with the support of 17 Human Rights Council member countries also in attendance, with 36 observer countries, including the United States and Canada. The request comes as the Ethiopian government leads a counter-offensive to regain ground from the rebels it has been fighting in the north of the country since November 2020. Now, to speak to us about this, we're joined now by Mxolisi Nkosi, who is the ambassador and permanent representative of South Africa to the United Nations in Geneva and other international organizations in Switzerland. Ambassador, very good evening to you. Apologies for our technical difficulties earlier. Hopefully the sound is much better for both of us now. So I just wanted to get your impressions about the status quo and the action that has been called for by EU countries and the observer nations that I've mentioned as well.
Well, thanks very much for having me, my sister. Indeed, this morning, the United Nations convened in special session to review the situation in Ethiopia. And it adopted a resolution calling for the appointment of an investigation team to investigate allegations of violations in Ethiopia. South Africa expresses its view about the ongoing situation in Ethiopia, notably the escalating conflict, the serious allegations of human rights laws, and the worsening humanitarian crisis. We call on all parties to cease hostilities and conduct themselves in accordance with their solemn obligations under international human rights and humanitarian law. We took advantage of this morning session to reiterate our support the mediation efforts undertaken by President Obasanjo, who is the EU envoy for the Horn of Africa. We urge all parties to cooperate for finding a durable, peaceful solution. We also took advantage of the session to visit Ethiopian government to accept and implement the recommendations contained in the report of the Ethiopian Rights Commission and Office of the High Commissioner, which was published last month. We call on all parties to provide unhindered humanitarian assistance to affected areas of the region. And indeed, we reaffirm our solidarity with Ethiopia during this difficult time.
All right, let me just jump in there. Ambassador, you're saying you reaffirm your unity with the people of Ethiopia. Now, the UN Human Rights Council, the session is to investigate abuses, as it says, on both sides. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this particular action that has been called for, an investigation. Ethiopia obviously objects to what it calls the meddling by the West. Will this council session carry much weight?
Well, my sister, as you mentioned, the session adopted by 21 votes the resolution as proposed by the West Group, particularly led by the EU, and there were 15 votes against and 11 of those, and 11 votes which abstained. So the resolution carried. And now it's up to the Human Rights Commissioner and Ethiopian authorities to see how to facilitate the implementation of.
So what was South Africa's contribution to the talks? And I talk about this with regards to the inherent bias by some, the prism through which they view this conflict. There's been talk about Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, for instance, saying that it's the Amara security forces that are responsible for the latest wave of expulsions, detentions and killings, particularly in the Tigray region. What do we know about the operation of government forces? Is it reprisals or is it, as we mentioned, counter-offensive attacks?
Well, South Africa is not part of the Council. There are 47 member states in accordance with the decision of the General Assembly. South Africa has applied to become a member of the Human Rights Council and was endorsed by the AU and hope to go back to the Council in the year 2023, between 2023 and 2025. At the moment, we are an observer and we have expressed our great concern about it. And indeed, we have indicated our call for the immediate use of facilities in Ethiopia and for the part conduct themselves under international human rights.
Ambassador, I do apologize for doing this. Unfortunately, the break-in transmission is making it rather difficult for us to get a clear sense of what the ambassador is saying, particularly South Africa's stance on this. Hopefully, we'll be able to try another time through another medium. I do apologize once again to you, Ambassador. Ambassador Mxolisi Nkosi is the ambassador and permanent representative of South Africa to the United Nations in Geneva and other international organizations in Switzerland, speaking to us about the meeting that was held at the UNHCR. There are calls for a probe into abuses on both sides, and I'm talking here about from Tigrayan forces and Ethiopian forces, and the ambassador is just telling us about that meeting and the vote and what it resulted in. Hopefully we'll be able to get him back at a later stage. This is The Globe. Do stay with us. We've got more news after this.